Welcome to Croatia. We've done mostly studio work here on the channel, but now it's time to step outside. The colors here are just incredible. Dusty olive greens in the brush, warm terracotta tones in the soil and the vegetation, and that soft limestone everywhere, and of course the Adriatic, that impossible mixture of turquoise, cobalt, and deep blue in the sky as well. The first stop along the coast, just south of Dubrovnik, is a little town called Molunat. Truth is, I grew up in this part of the world, so the landscape feels familiar, but painting it out of the open with the light constantly shifting, that's a whole new experience, as we'll see. Over the next few weeks, we'll be exploring more of Croatia, the coast, the inland, through a series of plein-air sessions. And as I pan up, you get a glimpse of what I'll attempt to paint in this session today. Wow, this is much more rugged than I anticipated. I'm trying to find a spot where I can lay down my tripod and at the same time get a good glimpse back at the beach. We're gonna go just a little further over. On the right, a whole lot of limestone, a whole lot of chiseled rock from the Adriatic Sea on the left here. I'm gonna try to set up right here on that ridge. Around the corner, I have a glimpse that the view back towards the small village. It's gonna be worthwhile. Trying to find a spot with the fleeting sun is a bit more of a challenge than I thought. I initially was thinking of maybe painting towards the town with the setting sun. There's some interesting colors, but maybe I'm going to face this way and maybe focus on these ships, as the sun might not be as big a problem over here. Okay. This is not exactly easy setting up on this cliff. See if I can get this and trying to get this thing level. But time is of the essence, as the sun is gonna probably fade in about half an hour. Let's see if we can capture this thing. Working on plein air definitely has its challenges. Sometimes just finding that spot that feels worth painting is half the battle. Then there's the wind. I thankfully didn't have to encounter too much of that, but there is of course the uneven ground, the shifting shadows, and the light never really waiting for you. But in the end, what I realized is that this style of what I consider most honest and responsive style of painting forces you to really slow down and respond to the moment and enjoy the act of painting much more than even studio work. I'm fighting against the clock here. The sun's about to set for us. I'm thinking I'd like to capture this scene over here with the sun setting towards the west here. So I'm thinking of placing this horizon quite low and maybe taking advantage of this expansive setting blue, phthalo blue sky of Dalmatia here. So let's put the horizon line right here somewhere. The rocks that are directly in front of me, I'm going to try to keep them out of it. I've got the sun already setting over this hill right here. Or you know what, let's go even lower. Let's go even lower. Let's come up here and have this come no higher than here. Oh. Gauging values with these watercolor paints is one of the difficulties of working with them, as they have a shift from their wet state to their dry state. Let's add a bit of yellow to that section down close to the horizon. My initial thought process when designing this painting there was I was really leaning into the negative space and letting that blue sky do most of the heavy lifting in design and space relationships. I'm going to get this even lower. I'm going to get this sky. I want it to be, and these cypress trees on the left are going to be up here. And I'm going to have it come even lower here. I'm going to leave the sky for now, but I will mention that as I am going higher, I am going to be adding a bit more of a darker value. I'm going with cobalt blue here, and there's a bit of a cloud up here. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just going to quickly block in this sky. As I said, values are shifting a little too quick for me, and there's a lot of hard edges that I don't want at this stage. It's hard to paint in this environment when you got something like this to the left of you, the crystal clear water, and you're sweating and you just want to jump in so badly. But let's continue on with this painting. Okay, I'm going to get the sea, just the indications of a sea here. This part over here is basically all in shadow. As I said, I'm not painting these rocks directly in front of me. I'm painting that hill in the background. And this part is shadow, so I'm putting in some viridian and some alizarin just to block in this shadow part as is over here. Okay, so I'm gonna put in these darks real quick. I'm gonna try to get it as dry brush as possible. As mentioned last week, I will be using mostly gouache for most of these plein air painting sessions throughout this trip, but I have tugged along my oils as well, so I will be pulling them out here and there as they behave entirely differently, of course, than these water-soluble paint mediums. So expect a whole lot of bravura and impasto and thick strokes over the coming weeks. This is definitely the most challenging style of painting. You're working behind the clock. You're trying to get this thing down before the sun sets. At the same time, you got all the same things we talked about on your mind: composition, edges, especially with gouache paints. This edge here is right over there, right over that boat, that edge over a crest. I think I'm going to make that the sharpest edge on this painting. I like the way that those rocks form on the horizon line, and that ship is framed perfectly up against those rocks. I've got red and green, as my darkest darks mixed in with a bit of red, Indian red, just to warm up that green. And see, this gouache is already set, which I don't necessarily mind. I'm using this brush, by the way, just like I would in this. This is setting quite quickly. These are so gummy. I'm using this brush much the same way I would with oil paints. I'm holding it the same way. I'm applying color the same way. The big difference, of course, is that these aren't oil paints. These are water-soluble, opaque watercolors. I like those cypress trees over there. This is so indicative of this region of the world. And the sun is kind of coming in over that ridge. It's still quite warm. This whole section on the right is in the shadow, and I'd like to keep it like that. I won't give too much more detail than I already have, except to add these rocks. And I think maybe adding a bit of this purple for the rocks. That's still too dark. I'm thinking I'm seeing purple. And I better get these ships put in place as well before the sun sets. Let's see if I can capture this shimmer of this Adriatic water just by dragging this brush. You don't quite see it in the camera, but I'm trying to make my strokes much looser. And I'm trying to make this painting much more spontaneous. I will likely come back to it later on. But especially in this blue sky. I mean, obviously you got undulations of color in the sky, but there's, I mean, as I said, the value shift is a little too harsh. I'm gonna have to obviously tone those down. But the main piece of this painting is this warmth that's prevalent on this hill right in front of me against that light sky, which I wanted to communicate. I think because this first session is a bit more difficult than I anticipated, maybe because these gouache paints are gumming up a little too much. I'm trying to complete this as quickly and as loosely as possible. This sea is coming out almost storm-like, which obviously is not the intention. But a few more strokes and I think I'm going to call it. And maybe work on this when I get back to my apartment here in Croatia. Okay, painting session day 1 complete. I am going to take this thing back and likely crop it even more so than I already did here. I'm happy with some of the things, a lot of the things not so much. I will have to, I think, work with a lot of the chroma. I think it's a little too chromatic, and I may define some of the edges on the horizon line. I like some of the loose brush marks, which actually came out at the end. I think I started too tightly, and I think it was maybe the rugged rocks that I was positioned at, and just this being my first plein air painting session in a number of years, I'd forgotten what challenge this was. But anyway, I think overall a success, a great deal of fun, I have to admit. So I will see you, I think, tomorrow to complete this painting. So I initially talked about yesterday about getting back to my apartment in this makeshift studio in Croatia and working on this piece here further, pushing chroma maybe, working with the design and changing it around. And then I thought, why? This is supposed to be a few week sessions of plein air sort of there's got to be a certain immediacy to it and experimentation, and I'd like to see the progress throughout these few weeks in the works themselves. And I think the best way to do that is to sort of get it out on canvas, leave it alone, and then sort of evaluate at the end of the session, and not to overwork too much back when you get back to your studio. Though that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't do that. In fact, you should, likely, in a lot of pieces that do come out to your satisfaction and you want to change things around and work from memory or work from reference photos. But I've chosen to sort of forego that stage. Overall, as I said yesterday, I'm relatively happy with some of the things in the piece, namely the brushworks, the spontaneous, loose brush marks that came out. But I wanted to come out here a day later to sort of sum up the first day and to give a word of encouragement in case you want to try this out. I'd forgotten how fun this was. I mean, I don't know why I'd waited this long. Maybe it's the schedule, maybe whatever. I've got a lot of commissions on the go, and it doesn't need to be expensive. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview as to how I prepared for this trip and what I brought yesterday and what I will be hopefully bringing over the next few weeks as we paint this part of the world together. So in case you want to join me, not here directly, maybe one day, but wherever you are in the world, I'm going to just give you an overview as to the materials that I used. So as you can see here, exact same rig from yesterday. I've got this, it's not a pochette box, it's just like a foldable little tripod thing, or sorry, the foldable palette. If I can get it off the tripod here. So I got this off Amazon. It's just like a foldable piece of wood. You can likely make this yourself. It's sturdy and it's got a shoe at the bottom that you attach to your tripod, which is right here. This thing was actually no more than, I think, $80 on Amazon.ca. So in the States, probably even cheaper. This tripod, you can get it anywhere from Amazon, Walmart, whatever. This is probably no more than 30-40 bucks. So all in, maybe 120 bucks. You can attach this to here, and you've got a foldable palette to use in the field. So this is like a standard, regular photo tripod thing that I use for camera or use as well. So it's not all that light. Likely you may want to go for a lighter option. This is maybe, I don't know, whatever it is, 2-3 kilos maybe. So palette. This guy inside, as a lot of you are familiar with at this point, is a Mylar sheet. Very light, very portable, very durable. It doesn't buckle, although it has warped, probably because of the sun in the corners here. But likely you can frame this if you wanted to, if you had a piece that you completed on plein air or in a studio, just the same way as you would any other work. But as I said, it's portable, light, durable, and yeah, packs really easily. Lastly, my gouache set. So deliberately for this trip, I didn't want to bring anything extensive or expensive, I should say. I got this set off Amazon a while back, and I figured it's a perfect time to bring it, to introduce plein air painting to everybody as well as myself, and make it accessible, and not, you know, you bring these expensive paints, whatever, Daniel Smith, Winsor Newton, whatever, and you get this sense of paralysis when you're working with it. You're thinking you got expensive paints, expensive this, that, and you can't get even started sometimes. So if you want to try this out, relatively cheap palette, really cheap tripod. I'm not sure how much these paints were. Having said that, a lot of these paints in here I make myself. So once they ran out, I've had this for a little while back now. So once they run out, I make my own, fill these tubes. I find this box quite convenient, really. Main reason is you don't have to mix anything. Well, you do, of course, but for the most part, there's a lot of choices here with warms and cools, much more than I obviously use. But yeah, you open it up, you get going, and yeah. So anyway, we're going to be leaving it at that. Hopefully another painting session will commence possibly as early as Monday or Tuesday this week, and then I'll share something later on in the coming week. For now, I will sign off from sunny Croatia. Hope to see you next week. Bye bye. Happy painting.